Now we are live.
All right, great. Thank you very much. This is the meeting of the Economic Development Committee of the Montgomery County Delegation. Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So hopefully we can get through, we do have a lot of business in front of us, but hopefully we can get through some of these bills rather quickly. You got the agenda, I trust, and you see that the bill we passed at our last meeting is back on the agenda. And that bill is MC 5-25. So at this time, I'm going to call on Vice Chair Wims for a motion.
Okay. Is this the one? Oh, 25, that's the alcoholic beverage. My bill that I'm making the motion is MC, yeah, it is 525. So,
Right.
Madam Chair, at the request of the sponsor,
Well,
I'd like
first, we need a motion to reconsider.
Okay.
Would
Could
you
we,
please
Madam Chair, go get a motion to reconsider?
say, I move
I move
that we reconsider
that we reconsider
the vote on MC 525.
vote on MC 525.
All right, a motion to reconsider. Is there a second? Seconded by Delegate Wallach. Any discussion? I think that's probably non-debatable. All in
Okay.
favor of reconsideration signify by saying aye.
Come here. Let's
Aye.
discuss how we
Any
can
opposed?
show our family.
Okay, remember, you have to be on camera to vote.
Yes.
Okay, now Delegate Wims has an amendment, I believe.
Yes, I have a amendment that has been requested by Delegate Crutchfield, who is the sponsor of MC 525. And the amendment simply says the chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board or the chair's designee may add a member to the task force for the displacement of residents of Emery Grove.
Right, so basically, Delegate Wims, this adds an additional amendment to the task force, who's the chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board or the designee of the chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board. Again, you need to be on camera to vote. We're going to take a vote, so everybody please get on camera. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So the motion is before you. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Now, can I have a motion, please, from someone to move the bill as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Delegate Solomon, a second. Seconded by
Second.
Delegate Wallach. Any discussion on the bill as amended? All in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or raise
Aye.
your hand. Any opposed? Delegate Kaiser, did you have a question? You're muted. Oh, you're voting aye. Okay, thank you. All right, so the motion carries and now we pass the bill and I hope it's on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting. Thank you very much for your indulgence on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, which we discussed last week, is MC 3-25, alcoholic beverages, beauty salons. And there are two proposed amendments to this bill. If you'll indulge me, one is my amendment on behalf of the sponsor, who's Senator Waldstreicher. I don't know if you've received this amendment. Ralph, can you put that amendment up for me, please?
Sure thing. One moment.
Yeah. So we're going to put it on the screen share so you can see it. There we are. All right. So what this amendment does, if you could scroll down just a little bit, Ralph, thank you. What this amendment does, it's very simple. It just adds barbershop. Right now, this bill applies only to beauty shops, and it was intended to apply to barbershops and beauty shops. So that is the amendment that I'm offering on behalf of the sponsor, and I will entertain an amendment, a motion to accept the amendment.
So moved.
Is there a motion? Thank you. Moved by Delegate Kaiser. Is there a second? Is there a second? Seconded by Delegate Wallach. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? No. All right, the amendment carries. Now we're back on the bill as amended with that amendment. And I'm going to call on Delegate Queen, who has a further amendment to the bill. Delegate Queen, if you'd like to introduce your amendment.
Sure, Madam Chair. My amendment is just maintaining the amount of beer that's currently in the legislature, in the legislation, and not increasing it to 12 ounces. That's simple.
Okay, so Delegate Queen is amending the bill with the amendment you see on the screen, which the bill as written says, says 12 ounces of beer. The bill the bill that is written, says 12 ounces of beer. Delegate Queen is amendment would strike that and leave it at 5 ounces of beer.
Which it originally is. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So Delegate Queen is moving. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, seconded by Delegate Fraser Hidalgo. Delegate Kaiser, do you have a question? Or
I
comment?
do. I do have a question of Delegate Queen. My understanding with most things when we do things related to alcohol, that we make the parallel, 1.5 ounce of hard alcohol, 5 ounce of wine, and 12 ounce of beer. And my understanding is that this bill with her amendment would be 5 ounces of wine and 5 ounces of beer. And I guess I don't agree with that. I think it should be the usual parallel. If we're keeping it 5 ounces of wine, then I think 12 ounces of beer is the appropriate amount. That's what people are used to, one serving of each of the different types of alcohol. So I would just like to understand her rationale.
Yeah, Delegate Queen, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, my rationale was my understanding it wasn't as 5 ounces of wine also in the amendment. Maybe I didn't, I missed that in the bill, but again, mine was to address the issue of why were we increasing the beer when it was already 5 ounces. I don't think it's 12 ounces of wine, is it?
That's not what I said.
Okay.
That's no. I said that 5 ounces of wine is equivalent to 12 ounces of beer. And if the current bill as written says 5 ounces of wine, why wouldn't we want to have the equivalent 12 ounces of beer? That's standard in every other setting when we describe a serving of alcohol versus wine versus beer. So I'm wondering why you wouldn't want that equivalency.
Because my understanding that the proposal, the original bill only had beer at 5 ounces. The new bill as proposed has, I thought, was less than 5 ounces of wine. I'm still not quite understanding your comment about equivalency. We're not asking for 5 ounces of wine. Am I mistaken?
So that's correct.
So,
Delegate
so
Kaiser,
could I-
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, yes. Yes, I apologize. Could someone clarify what
Sure.
the
I
current
think what
language of the bill would say?
Yeah, I think what Delegate Kaiser is saying, and I asked the sponsor and talked to the folks in the county who deal with liquor legislation. I think what Delegate Kaiser is saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Delegate Kaiser, but I think what she is saying is that in bills that we have alcohol limits, that the equivalent alcohol content is the same for 12 ounces of beer, 5 ounces of wine, and 1.7 ounces of liquor. And that's what the bill has in it. Delegate Queen is correct in that the law originally had only 5 ounces of beer. I don't know why that was the case. It may have been an oversight. I don't know. I'm not speaking to that. I don't know whether Mel Wanger is on the call. I don't know whether she has anything she wants to add with respect to that.
Can I ask a question before?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What was the initial wine amount in the original bill?
In
It
the
was-
original beer and in the law, as it stands, it's 5 ounces.
Of wine as well as beer.
Yeah. 12
Okay.
ounces of wine would be a lot more alcohol content for wine. Wine has a higher alcohol.
No, I got you now. I understand.
Okay.
What you're saying. And so what Delegate Kaiser is saying is that it was an error, I guess, the first time to say 5 ounces of beer because you would have had less wine if it was 5 ounces of wine initially?
Not 5 ounces of wine.
No, no, Delegate Queen, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is,
Okay.
I wasn't even, I was just saying why, if it's 5 ounces of wine, why should it be 5 ounces of beer? I never said anything about 12 ounces of wine. Please don't anyone suggest that I made that comment. No, I'm just saying that if the bill currently, or if the law currently is 5 ounces of wine, then I am arguing that it is appropriate then to be 12 ounces of beer.
Okay, and I
That's what I'm
want to
saying.
clarify what I was asking is, did the bill currently, as in law, have 5 ounces of beer and 5 ounces of wine? That's a yes or no question.
Yes, the law, as it's written now,
Okay.
before this bill was introduced, has 5 ounces of beer and 5 ounces of wine and no liquor.
Right, I know it doesn't have liquor. So now we're adding liquor or spirits at 1.7 ounces, which, if I'm understanding your comment, Delegate Kaiser, 1.7 ounces of spirits is equivalent to 5 ounces of wine and 12 ounces of beer. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that that is what our alcohol and beverage service people are saying. Yes.
Okay. And so therefore, initially, when we did the bill, when we put 5 ounces of beer and 5 ounces of wine, we weren't following that equivalent. Would that be a correct statement?
I believe that's correct, Delegate Queen.
Okay.
Delegate Solomon, before I call on Mel Wanger, Delegate Solomon.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to jump in. I had talked to the sponsor of the bill because it's for a business in District 18, and that's exactly what he said. It was actually the drafters' suggestion to update the equivalency, that 1.7 ounces of hard liquor in our equivalence is equal to 5 ounces of wine is equal to 12 ounces of beer, and that's just sort of the standard equivalent.
Okay, can someone please mute? Thank you.
Okay, so again, not understanding that, and my thought was we were increasing the beer content for no reason. I'll remove my amendments. Is that okay?
Okay, so Delegate
And
Queen.
I'll ask Delegate DFH, does he have a concern about that since he did second?
Delegate Frazier Hidalgo has his hand raised. So if you have a comment, Delegate Frazier Hidalgo.
Yes, I
before
do.
we do this. Okay. Go ahead.
So my question is, I know that Delegate Kaiser talked about kind of policy and keeping policy across the board the same. So, 5 and 12, and then 1.25 or 1.75, whatever it is for spirits. My question is, and I'm not a big drinker, so pardon this question, but is that the equivalent alcohol content between beer, wine, and spirits? Is that just our policy, or is that the equivalent? In other words, is 12 ounces of beer generally equal to 5 ounces of wine and then 1 point whatever ounces of spirits?
Delegate Frazier
The total
Hidalgo,
alcohol
yes.
content.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. The alcohol content of those amounts are equal. That's a
Okay.
fact. That's a fact.
That's a fact. Okay, I want to make sure, because what I had heard, the way I interpreted what was said was that that's the policy in other pieces of law, and we wanted to keep the policy the same, which I understand, but I want to make sure that I'm clear that that's the policy for other pieces, for other parts of the law. It also happens to be the fact that the reason that policy is because it's equivalent to the same alcohol content.
That is correct, but Mel Wanger is on the call, and Mel, if you could speak to that and confirm that for me, please.
I believe that is correct, and I think that Chair Foley, there was a question about this, and I think you asked a question about it, and from our police department, we kind of did equivalencies, and I believe too when Amy Saman, who is the SME and ABS when she described this, I mean, it was almost like kind of a technical change as far as the beer and wine.
Okay, thank you. So there is, Delegate Queen has asked to remove the amendment. Delegate Fraser Doggle, are you okay with that as a seconder?
Yeah, I just want it to be crystal clear because I get nervous when we do this. It's like every time I turn around, we're allowing more beer, wine, and spirits in all of these places. And I also had asked a question last week, which I haven't heard answered yet,
I
but
know.
I asked a question last week about if we are seeing any increases in DWIs in the middle of the day. Do we have any DWIs or DUIs coming out of, you know, the hair salons? And I just, some of this makes me nervous because I know we want economic development, but I'm not sure a lot of drinking is the best way to pursue economic development.
Okay, thank you. So Delegate Kaiser, we're now on, the amendment has been withdrawn. And do you want to make a comment on the amendment or on the bill?
I just wanted to, I guess, address something that Delegate Fraser Dolgo said when I mentioned that it was the policy of ABS. It's their policy because it's the alcohol standard, but it's also not entirely true, Delegate Foley, that it's always the case. Certainly some wines have more or less alcohol, some beers have more or less alcohol. So it's really the on average, but it's the standard everywhere because of the equal alcohol content. I'm sorry that I didn't make that part clear. I assumed everyone understood it was the policy because it was actually based on alcohol content. So
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Kaiser. I
Thank you.
appreciate the
And
clarification.
Mel, Delegate Fraser Doggo did raise the issue in the last session, and do you have any information on that?
I do, and that is, I reached out to the Montgomery County Police Department to find out if they had any data that created a correlation between the two, and they do not.
They do not have data, or they do not have the ability to correlate.
I think that they have not been able in past instances to correlate a DUI with a beauty salon that held this license and the connection between the two.
Okay, thank you.
And just for your information, Mel also looked at the number of establishments that have these licenses across the county, and right now it's 14. A lot of them are nail salons, by the way, which is interesting to me. Anyway, so are there any other questions before we take a vote on this bill? Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, seeing none, I will now entertain a motion to adopt the bill as amended with the addition of barbershop as outlined in that amendment. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Move favorable as amended.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Kaiser. Moved by Delegate Kaiser. Is there a second? Is there a second? Seconded by Delegate Solomon. All right, remember, cameras on to vote. All in favor of MC 3-25 as amended. We'll take a voice vote first. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unmute yourself or put your hand up. Okay, good. Any opposition? All right, hearing none, we will send MC 3-25 to the delegation for their action. Good work. We got 2 done. Okay, we have 2 more bills on our agenda, and I'm not sure that we can pass those bills today. But one we did discuss last week, and that is MCPG 107-25. That is the bill proposed by Delegate David Moon. He was on this call, but now I don't see him. But Delegate Queen also has an amendment for this. And as well, I believe, and I just saw it this morning, Ralph, the amendment that you sent out either late yesterday or early this morning, is that the amendment from the county executive?
Sorry, 1 second. Let me see.
It looks like it is. I mean, I
Yes,
didn't
it is.
see it. Okay, I didn't see this till this morning. And I don't think the committee has seen this. I'm going to assume that the committee has not seen this amendment. So there's an amendment we discussed last week from the county executive, Kathleen Boucher, flagged for us that the county executive would have an amendment. We now have it from drafting. You haven't seen it. I don't, just to flag, I don't think we'll take action on this bill today, but I do want to discuss these amendments so that we're ready to act possibly at the next meeting. Kathleen, did you want to talk about the amendment?
Sure. And thank you to your staff for drafting it. We appreciate it. So in the bill that Delegate Moon introduced, there is an annual reporting requirement. And essentially it's going to be something that county reps, or DPS and DHCA and WCC will work together on to provide information on the number of exemptions that are granted each year in each category, the amounts, etc. So there's already the annual report there. And that requirement would apply as it is to affordable housing projects. What we're doing here is we're clarifying that the information in that annual report, we're separating out affordable housing from the other categories to sort of stress that, and we're going to be providing information about number of exemptions, amounts, etc. But we're also going to be focusing on the number of publicly sponsored and affordable housing units included in each project. Sort of that's an important policy goal there. So that's all it is it clarifies what's in the annual report regarding the exemptions that are granted to affordable housing projects.
Okay.
I would note, just to clarify, in the explanation of the amendments, it indicates that this would apply to both Montgomery County and Prince George's County, but the way that
That's
Delegate
wrong.
Moon drafted
Yeah.
the bill, it's all the language in the bill only applies to Montgomery County.
Okay, so Ralph, maybe you could get back to the bill drafter and ask him to fix that. And then I'm going to ask that it be distributed to the committee so they have it. Because this is a technical bill with a lot of technicalities in it. And I think you need to look at the bill, put the amendment side by side with the bill, and look and see how the amendment affects the bill. Yeah, my understanding is it doesn't have as Kathleen said, it's about the report, but I think it would be useful if you did it. And I don't know, has the county talked to the sponsor of the bill about this amendment?
Yeah, we've worked with Delegate Moon and with Chris Daniel in his office, and it's my understanding that he's fine with this amendment, that it's
Okay.
consistent with his intent. I always hate to speak on behalf of somebody, but that's my
Sure.
understanding.
Yeah. Well, like I said, this is just a work session on this bill at this point. So we'll probably come back at a future meeting and actually vote on the bill and the amendments. I just wanted to get them out there today because this is a rather technical bill. Wanted to make sure people understood. Are there any questions for Kathleen? Or Kathleen? I see that Chris Daniel from Delegate Moon's office has his hand raised. Chris?
I sincerely apologize. I was on mute. I just want to confirm, Kathleen, and thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. It is a friendly amendment with Delegate Moon.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good to know. Thank you for confirming that. Delegate Solomon.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I will admit I didn't get a chance to follow up on this earlier in the week, but I know I'd asked last week. Have we confirmed, is this retroactive? Like, could a childcare business that opened 2 years ago come to the council or to the county and apply for the rebate, even if it's been a year or two since they actually paid the fee? So I think we had
That
talked
is
about
how-
potentially adding that in
Yes,
if
we should.
needed.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I think you can feel free to add it in if you'd like. It is how the program works, Delegate Solomon. I'll give you an example. Delegate Moon actually approached us in the interim about whether the Gudelsky Child Care Center that is now in the old Silver Spring Library had received the credit and the exemption. And we did some research and found out that no, it hadn't applied for it. So the county actually reached out in that circumstance to say, hey, you might be eligible. And if you want to apply, you still can. And in that case, it turns out that they weren't eligible because they don't own the land. It's a lease from the county. That's actually why that's actually why Delegate Moon's bill is taking out an ownership requirement. So that's how it's applied, Delegate Solomon. I mean, if you felt there was language in there to clarify that, I can just tell you it's consistent with how the program operates.
Mel, I'm sorry, Kathleen, do you know, is there a time limit to it? Because the Gadelsky Center opened fairly recently. So, I mean, could this be something like 2 years? Is there typically, I think it was more of like, is there typically a time limit that the county applies to it, or is it just,
No.
okay.
No, there isn't. And if you want to feel confident about that, we wouldn't oppose any, express language to that effect.
Okay. So,
Okay. All right.
yeah. So I would
Thank
just
you.
ask Delegate Solomon if you're, if you want to think about it, fine. If you're thinking about it, the sooner you can get the amendment to Ralph, the better.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then also on this bill, and again, we're not going to take action on this bill today, so you can ruminate on the county executive's amendment, and feel free, of course, to ask any questions after you take a look at it. And then Delegate Queen also has an amendment to this bill that she would like us to do. And Delegate Queen, do you want to explain your amendment to the bill?
Yes, please. Thank you much. So comment was made, I think, last time about the program, and this is a very important program. I think Delegate Kaiser mentioned, and we didn't discuss it before, that it had first come, first serve basis. And for some people, that's, that they don't always know about something at the same time. So I know we have to have limits. So I understand that's the reason for that. But would there be some consideration of, I don't know, taking that out, or how could we ensure that this is going out to folks that would most benefit from it because of a lack of knowledge? Any thoughts on that, Kathleen, or anyone?
Before I let Kathleen answer, Delegate Kaiser has her hand up. Let me call on her first.
Okay.
Referencing your comment.
Thank you, Delegate Queen, for following up on that. And yes, I think first come, first serve is awful policy. What I learned from Kathleen Boucher is that she emailed me last week to say that they've never hit the limit before. So it hasn't been a problem. But I think given you bringing it up again, makes me think that maybe we could put, I don't know, if some intent or express language of some sort, that once the county at some year reaches 80% or 90% capacity, that they need to develop a process for when they start getting asks for more than 100% of what's in the fund, that they must change from first come, first serve. So maybe that's something we can, I wouldn't know how to, well, that's what the drafters would do. I wouldn't know exactly how to say that, but if someone's not paying attention to this, if Delegate Queen, myself, and Kathleen Boucher aren't here 5, 8, 10 years from now when we hit the limit and no one's paying attention, do we miss it? So do we force them to put this in later? So that might be a variation. Thank you, Delegate Queen.
Delegate Queen, did you want to say something, or?
No, I wanted to hear from Kathleen.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Okay, Kathleen, if you want to respond to all that.
Sure. There's two related issues here. The language that's in there on first come, first serve, it's my understanding that language is not anything substantive, in the sense that it is how the program operates. The DPS and DHCA evaluate eligibility for exemptions in the different categories as they come in. They don't prioritize one or the other. They're like, they handle them 1, 2, 3, 4. They come in, and they're not, the order in which they come in is how they process them. So in talking with Delegate Moon, it was my understanding that language was intended to be clarifying, if it's confusing, I defer to the committee and Delegate Moon to speak to that. But substantively, it's not a change from the perspective of county reps. To Delegate Kaiser's comment, so the related concept here is that the state statutes lets the county councils in Prince George's and Montgomery County, but lets Montgomery County Council essentially set a total aggregate amount each year, and it's 500,000 that they set. And that's what Delegate Kaiser, when she was referring to that, we've never come close to the $500,000. So what happens when you hit the 500,000? Should that ever happen? I don't know, and I don't know what language you would put in there. Because essentially what you're saying is you're giving discretion to the county to fund this program if they want to fund it, at the amount they want to fund it. And if it ever hit the cap, they wouldn't have funding.
But then that suggests you have some issue with someone presenting it and come back and say, because now we talked about Delegate Solomon, we're going to look at the time frame. So we may be going back years now, and so you could conceivably hit the limit at some point. So what would happen? You would tell the person, I just don't have money. Then you don't need that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't need a first come, first served statement at all then, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think, if I could jump in here, I think that's what Kathleen is saying, that the language is just clarifying for anyone who is using the law, I'll put it that way, to say that, this is the process. It's first come, first serve, but the process is first come, first serve, whether it's in the law or not. That's her point, I think, given the current practice. Delegate Kaiser talked about something else, but that's basically, I think, what Kathleen was saying. Am I correct, Kathleen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That all that being said, what we're neutral on whether it stays in there or not, because from the county's perspective, taking it in or taking it out doesn't change how the program operates.
No, I was kind of concurring with what you said. It doesn't matter if it's in or out,
Right.
based on what you're saying, Kathleen.
Delegate Kaiser.
I understand that everything that Ms. Boucher said, that yes, it doesn't matter if it's in or out, that's how it's being implemented. But we do have a role as a state legislature, obviously with bills like this, to be able to tell the county what to do or not. And so I'm just suggesting maybe we do say, if it ever nears the limit, that we would suggest the county do a study or create a different process. So it is looking to the future, but only because we might not be thinking about it over the next few years. And if it ever did get close to 500,000, and Delegate Queen is correct that if the retroactive funding adds to it as well, and it gets it close at some time in the future, just something would kick in to say, hey, county, you're about to hit the limit. We think you should consider a new policy. We think you should consider a new implementation of this program.
Yeah, Delegate Kaiser, I can just say, I would imagine the county executive, county council would be open to that. It's consistent with, well, county council hasn't taken a position, actually. They're going to be meeting on Monday, and this is one of the bills
Right.
they'll take up. But in terms of the annual report that's already there, the annual report that's in the bill, I mean, I would imagine you could add it to that, or however you want to do it. I imagine it's a policy decision. I would imagine the county wouldn't have any trouble with that, is what I'm saying, because I understand the policy concern you have.
Delegate Kaiser, would you like an amendment to that effect drafted? I think Delegate Kaiser is saying thumbs up, yes.
Yes, and if I can, yes, I'll talk to the person to figure that out. Yeah.
Okay, and could you also, I think you
I'll
said.
talk to Ralph to figure out who to talk to.
Okay, and I was gonna also suggest that maybe you touch base with the sponsor of the bill as well, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, great, thank you. And as Ms. Boucher said, the county council has not taken a position on this bill, although the county executive has, and we have the county executive's proposed amendment. But the county council will be meeting on Monday, so that's another reason for us to hold this bill. So before we move on to our last bill on our list today, are there any questions about what we discussed related to this bill today? We'll discuss it again next week, but are there any other questions or comments on the discussion that we've had so far? All right, thank you. Seeing none. So we're going to move forward, and Delegate Kaiser is going to work with Ralph to get an amendment drafted for possible introduction next week. And we will put this on the list for our meeting next week. And hopefully we can get to the point at that point, have all the pieces we need to be able to take action on the bill. Okay, thank you very much for that good discussion. Moving on to MC 15-25. This is a bill. It is a study of near and dear to my heart because it's in my district. It's proposed by Delegate Chee, whom you know is taking care of a family matter overseas, but her Chief of Staff, Katie Hardy, is here. Delegate Chee is offering an amendment to this bill. I don't know if people have seen this amendment either, because this just came in late. So Ralph, could you put the amendment to MC 1525 up on the screen? And while he's doing that, let me remind you, I'm getting the bill myself, that MC 1525 is a bill that would authorize a study of agritourism in the agriculture reserve. It came out of a meeting that was held in the Western County, I think year before last, about economic development in and around the agriculture reserve, focusing on Poolsville, but also other areas. And I think Delegate Chee, I'm sorry, Katie of Delegate Chee's office maybe has some comments on how the amendments change what the focus of this is.
Absolutely, yes. Pardon me. The intent of this amendment, one, is to allow the Department of Commerce a little bit more flexibility in who they work with to conduct the study. And we really are trying to, well, agritourism is something we want to understand in this study. We also want to understand just in general what an agricultural economy can look like and how that can benefit the local economy. So we may also be considering drafting an amendment that would just expand the scope just a little bit to ensure that we're not just focusing on the tourism aspect of development, but also just what can be done to help promote the barriers to development within the agricultural reserve.
And Katie, if I can, let me just ask you to clarify that this is a study that I think is envisioned to be done by a third party, really at little or no cost to the Department of Commerce. Is that correct?
Correct. By this amendment would allow the Department of Commerce to utilize other existing resources, such as the University of Maryland Extension Program, the Visit Montgomery, the Montgomery County Office of Agriculture, and other offices along those lines that are already collecting different types of data, but they may not all be communicating with each other and sharing that information.
Okay. Are there any questions of Ms. Hardy from Delegate Chee's office about this bill or the amendments? Delegate Frazier Hidalgo.
Yeah, thank you. Did we hear anything back from anybody in the Ag Reserve, the countryside, all those folks that had some questions earlier? We resolved all their questions?
They had reached out earlier this session, and I replied and provided them information about the planned amendment, and they did not reply with any feedback.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions about this bill? We're not going to act on this bill today. But Ralph, if you could circulate these amendments as well. And Ms. Hardy, I'm confused a little bit. You're expecting yet another amendment to this bill besides what we have?
We just want to, we want to read through it one more time and make sure that we're not focusing purely on agritourism, but other ways but also studying other economic development methods that can be used in the ag reserve that aren't solely tourism based.
Okay, well, it would really help the committee if you could decide that and get the information to Ralph and
Absolutely.
get the amendment drafted. I think given, that there seem to be no questions about this bill, other than the one raised by Delegate Fraser Doggo, and I know why he raised that question, but I other than, since it doesn't seem to be much concern about this bill, there seems to be understanding of it. If we could get that amendment done, possibly we could act on this bill next week. So
Absolutely, and we definitely plan on getting the information to Ralph no later than the end of the day today.
okay, great. All right. So with that said, thank you for a great meeting today, folks. Does anybody have anything else for the Economic Development Committee? Hearing nothing, seeing no hands. That was a hand from me on my own screen. Seeing no hands, I will move that we adjourn. Any objections? We're adjourned. Thank you.